No.
I have never had issue with YouTube. I've had issue with Facebook shutting down, but never ever have issue with YouTube. And last week, all the stuff we were talking about suddenly had issues with YouTube. Hi. And actually, Facebook is actually, Facebook had a lot of us in jail or restricted. Yeah, it's strange. When all this first started, they had to go back a year into my timeline to find something to be offended about and restrict me for 30 days. I was within either hours or minutes of getting out of that restriction, and I posted a meme, funny, against community standards. You can't go live for 60 more days. The only live event I ever do other than a Christmas parade is a weekly Sunday school lesson. I've had dreams for months now about, being monitored and watched and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, yesterday or the day before, all of a sudden, everybody who was restricted Facebook got unrestricted. That's almost more terrifying than it's like, what are you trying to do? You trying to lead us into a little pit here, or what's going on?
Hey, maybe they watched your
lesson.
Yeah. Hope they watched it close. Listen.
Yeah, well, they cut yesterday's. Last week's they cut it, and with that guy telling what the dream was, killed it. The only cop managed to restart it and catch the Dr. Harari part of it. But like one guy said, I need some all new conspiracy theory because all my conspiracies are turned into facts. All right, we're going to do a couple of things, and I want to hear you talk about the reservation. But how many people? You heard they were saying we learn from history that we do not learn from history. Well, we have to learn from history. Okay, we have to learn from history. We have to. Can't sit back. I was talking to somebody the other day, and once again, as the lady that visited last week said that, if the rapture is really considered imminent, then shouldn't that mean that people are working twice as hard and not digging a bunker and stocking it with food and, thinking I'm just going to hold up here until it's all over with? There's only a certain demographic that said that we're hidden in mountains and caves, and let the caves and mountains fall on us, and those weren't the good people. But I ran into somebody the other day that, and I've done this a lot, was talking about the bad times coming, and they just popped up with a big smile on their face and said, well, I'm a pre-tribber. That's good.
Right.
Me too. Me too. But this does not mean that you're going to escape any kind of thing governmentally. Once again, we've seen, you talking about Ukraine today, we've seen China, we've seen Germany, we've seen Russia. I looked last night, 100 years of communism, 100 million dead. That's 1 million a year.
Oh.
That's a pretty serious thing. And according to, the guy we listened to last week, the only reason Stalin and Mao and all the people couldn't pull it off was because they couldn't surveil people under the skin, which is their utopian, dystopian society thing that they're working toward. And if you're of the mindset that I'm just going to sit back and do absolutely nothing because the rapture is just a month or two or a year or 6 months away, then you're part of the problem, because the harvest has to come in. The harvest has to come in. God's not going to leave his harvest down here for Satan. It's not going to, we have to put doctrinal differences aside, not truth aside, but, doctrinal differences on opinions on things. We can't let anything really divide us. But we're going to listen to this. Well, I think one's 3 minutes and one's like 30 seconds. But we're going to take a little trip back into history because most people have no idea.
Ideology being Marxism.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jesus, how much proof of that do you need?
Right, but that's most people don't understand Marxism. Like when you're saying this, like when you were so adamant about it, I had to start reading about it myself, and I had to start doing a lot of research about it myself. And I think most people hear Marxism and they think socialism.
Yeah.
They think pooling all your money together, making things more even for people.
Yeah, like they are in Venezuela. Everybody has an equal chance to starve to death. So you know how the Venezuelan government solved the problem of kids starving to death in hospitals? They made it illegal for the doctors to report starvation as the cause of death. Right.
Wow.
That's Venezuela.
Yeah.
In a-
Let me interject. Venezuela is one of the most oil and gold rich nations on this earth.
shell. Yeah, that's, everyone's equal there.
Oh, and one more thing, as is America. Between us and Canada, we've got 280 years of oil just in us and Canada. Okay. So this whole thing of, you know,
They all have
Horrible.
the same number of bones to gnaw on.
Yeah, that's a horrible thing, but
Yeah, it's
There's
a
a-
horrible thing.
undeniable. But there's no, like, the connection between gender pronouns and murder. It's a big leap.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Well, that's why you have to look at the underlying ideology, you know, and you think, well, what is the level at which these things should be addressed? Well, is it economic? Is it political?
Or is
Is
it
it
the
personal?
beginnings of this ideology, and you understand where the roadmap leads?
Yeah.
You understand the X at the end of the road.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Well, and I think that's why I recommended to people continually to read Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. So actually, there's a set of books that lay this out perfectly. You read Dostoevsky wrote a book called The Possessed, or The Devils, and it's a description of the initial breakdown of Orthodox Christian society in Russia in the late 1800s, and the rise of radical socialist ideas. So it's sort of like the prodroma to the Russian Revolution. It's a brilliant book, and it concentrates on the personalities that are involved. And then if you read after that, Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, where he details what he does in that book is quite remarkable. So he says, look, there were tens of millions of people killed from 1919 to 1959 in the Soviet Union, and as a consequence of internal repression. And it's so dreadful that words can't do it justice. I mean, it's absolutely dreadful what happened in the Soviet Union. I mean, just for starters, 6 million Ukrainians died in the 1930s because of enforced starvation. In fact, in the 1930s, here's how terrible it was. So all the food that the collective farmers, newly collectivized farmers had produced, which wasn't very much, by the way, was taken from them and brought to the cities. So all the farmers starved to death. Now here's how draconian it got. So let's say you were the mother of some children, and all your grain had been shipped off to the cities, and you thought, well, I'm not going to have my children starve to death. I'm going to go out in the field, and I'm going to, on my hands and knees, and I'm going to pick up the grains that are left over that the harvesters didn't get, and I'm going to feed those to my kids. That was punishable by death. You were supposed to hand in those extra bits of grain so that they could be shipped to the city as well. So that was just the beginning of the fun in the Soviet Union. And what Solzhenitsyn did was say, look, this wasn't a consequence of the Marxist system gone wrong. This was a consequence of the Marxist system. It was an inevitable consequence of the axioms of the Marxist system. And then he lays that out, and it's, well, I think he got it right.
And what is that
That's why he won the
connection?
Nobel Prize.
But what is the connection?
How much tyranny you have to impose in order to produce something like equality of outcome.
how much tyranny you have to impose in order to produce equality outcome. Except for, of course, the people running it. They're all millionaires and do, eat, say, whatever that they want to.
Exactly what they did in the 1920s. And as I said, they wiped out all their productive peasants. And then 6 million Ukrainians starved to death. They had posters. The Soviets produced posters in the 1930s that said, essentially, don't forget, it's wrong to eat your children. So,
Whoa.
yeah, whoa. There's nothing about the there's nothing that you can imagine that's horrible enough so that it matched the reality of what happened in the Soviet Union between 1919 and 1959. And, you know, the West knew about this too. Early, Malcolm Muggeridge in the 30s was documenting for England, for English newspapers, exactly what was going on in the Soviet Union. Bloody intellectuals didn't admit it till the mid-70s, you know, with the exception of people like George Orwell. So,
I wrote an article about this once, about a young man who was in the Chinese military, and his dad was hiding the government, so he didn't get killed, but he did get 20 years in prison for letting it out to the West. That he said, as we went through the villages, he said, I saw the sad thing that everybody was talking about. I saw families trading their children so they wouldn't have to eat their own babies. And this is the land that was prosperous. This was the land that is the breadbasket of Europe. This is the land, and all it simply takes is bad leadership. Bad leadership and terror. Okay? And if you're of the ilk that can sit around and say, well, I'm going to sit on my hands and I'm going to just stock food back and I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to talk to anybody, I'm not going to vote, I'm not going to do this, then if you think it won't happen here, I like what Mordecai told Esther. He says, if you hide, he said, help and comfort will come to the Jews from somebody else, but you're not going to survive it. And I say the same thing. If you help and comfort is going to come to America and the church, but if you just sit back and think, I ain't got nothing to do with it, you know what? God may take your talent and give it to Lonnie.
I'll take it.
All right. All right. Read scriptures, and then I want to hear about the resurrection.
One moment. You're on TV.
Hilkiah.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Jeremiah 1:1. These are the words of Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, one of the priests from the town of Anthron, in the land of Benjamin. The Lord first gave messages to Jeremiah during the 13th year of the reign of Josiah, son of Amon, king of Judah. The Lord gave me this message. I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as my prophet to the nations. O sovereign Lord, I said, I can't speak for you. I'm too young. The Lord replied, don't say I'm too young, for you must go wherever I send you and say whatever I tell you. And don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you and will protect you. I, the Lord, have spoken. Today I appoint you to stand up against nations and kingdoms. Some you must uproot and tear down, destroy and overthrow. Others you must build up and plant. Yes, Lord said, for terror from the north will boil out on the people of this land. Listen, I am calling the armies of the kingdom of the north to come to Jerusalem. I, the Lord, have spoken. They will set their thrones at the gates of the city. They will attack its walls and all the other towns of Judea. I will pronounce judgment on my people for all their evil, for deserting me and burning incense to other gods. Yes, they worship idols made with their own hands. Get up and prepare for action. Go out and tell them everything I tell you to say. Do not be afraid of them, or I will make you look foolish in front of them. For see, today I have made you strong like a fortified city that cannot be captured, like the iron pillar of a bronze wall. You will stand against the whole land, the kings, officials, priests, and the people of Judea. They will fight you, but they will fail. For I am with you, and I will take care of you. I, the Lord, have spoken.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, Lonnie just recently went to a place where, if you want total government control, you got it. Tell us how prosperous the reservations are, Lonnie.
Well, the reservations approximately 9 or 10 years ago had a fire that swept across the reservation, burning a lot of the timber and stuff. Timber was a big thing for the Apache Nation to work in there on the reservation. Outside the reservation is Solo City, which has about everything you could imagine, every restaurant, Home Depot, Lowe's, everything. So most of the people go outside the reservation to buy their goods. There is I saw one small grocery store. There might be 2 on the reservation. The reservation is quite large, has different little communities and towns. Has several churches. We experienced, we went to a revival they were having. We did 2 services, 2 tremendous, great speakers. The big thing on the reservation is alcoholism and suicide. Suicide, there was 4 families, 4 individuals that had committed suicide of the church that we visited and somewhat recent. Yes, poverty. There is a casino that supposedly every 25 cents is supposed to go to the Indian reservation. But by the time they pay all their expenses and so forth, there's not 25 cents left of every dollar. There's nothing. But anyway, most of the people will try to work outside the reservation, but alcoholism takes a major part of that.
Alrighty. Yeah. Or like any Native American tell you, when the government says trust us, don't trust them.
Their identity has been took away when they were many generations back, when they were, the children were took away from their parents, sent to a school and tried to
Get the Indian out of them.
get the Indian out of them. Their language was took away. Their identity was took away. They were given English names. They were on and on and on.
Yeah, that's part of conquering somebody
And
is
so
take their history.
These are things that they are still trying to recover from.
It's but it probably looked good on some government paper somewhere.
Sure.
Who knows much about Jeremiah? What was Jeremiah known as?
The weeping prophet.
Yeah, they actually, whether the miry clay was just a clay pit or was a sewer, I'm not sure, but they got so mad at him that they dropped him down up to probably his chest and left him there for quite a while. Like I heard Nate talk one time, says, people love to quote Jeremiah, I know the plans that I have for you, plans for hope in the future. And they don't know what Jeremiah went through.
Amen.
I mean, Jeremiah went through a lot, and people who are used a lot of God, you can just expect it. You're not going to skate through.
Apostle Paul said, you serve God, you will be persecuted.
You will suffer persecution. Oh man, here we go. They killed us again. It says, and everybody wants the title apostle now, but apostles have been put on the end of the parade like sheep set for slaughter. So these people who want big names, no doubt, apostle is part of the fivefold ministry. So no doubt they're there. But everybody wants to, just like we spoke yesterday during the Seder, is everybody wants to be a leader so they can rule, and leaders serve. They don't sit and point. Leaders get right in there and work with you.
Well, talking about the fivefold ministry narrative, the church is built on the apostles and prophets.
Mhm.
Now, there's a lot of them that call themselves this and that, and they aren't. That's where you got to sort things out.
Yeah.
But there are apostles, even this day.
But there's a lot of people I've heard, and I've never ran into these people, but I've heard people say that, I'm apostle so-and-so, and when you address me, you have to call me apostle so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my card, Or, you don't have to, if you're an apostle, people are going to know it. If you're a prophet, people are going to know it. You don't have to have a business card printed up with Prophet Tony Martin. It's like, no, You know, to even think that's a terrifying thing. How many's planting a garden this year?
Yeah, she is. Planting a garden. Who is?
Well, I'm going to grow as much as I can to help as much as I can, but yeah,
Picture the maid is out by the fence.
They're pretty close to the fence. I'm gonna watch you with Tony.
but I'm not sure how long people can live off of tomatoes and peppers, but yeah. Throw a little watermelon in there from time to time.
I want to get a blueberry bush for $31. Just gonna-
Oh my goodness. Get a cutting off somebody. You know, it's amazing the stuff you could just break off a twig and grow. I got some muscadine grapevines last year, and you got to trim them all the way up to a certain point and at certain intersections. And those cuttings I took to people, and they just put them in water and rooted them, and now they've got free muscadine vines.
Blueberry bush.
I don't have a blueberry bush. I did years ago, but I found out before I could ever harvest them, the ants got them and the birds got them. If you got cherry or blueberry, you've got to cover them up. You got to put the netting
We
on.
had a cherry tree for a long time, and the day they got ripe, the birds flew in and ate them all.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have one member. Over up the mountain there.
You might as well hone up on your green thumb, because you know what's the most famous quote about the millennial reign? You're going to grow a garden. They beat their weapons into plowshares.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to work with your own hands, and you're going to grow a garden, you know, or you're going to whatever. The future that they imagine for you and I is bleak and dismal, because what they want is we wake up in the morning, we yawn, stretch, go out there, we push a button, and our tractor starts up and warms up. We push another button, and some ugly robot goes over and dumps the seed in, and then we line up, turn on the GPS, and click another button, and the tractor goes out and sows all the field, you know, or goes out, and, you know, if they still let you have cows or sheep, they'll go out, and, you know, and you basically sit in the recliner and run everything through the joystick, and if it's extreme.
They already have tractors like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you know, I just bought a piece of equipment from a guy, and he said the scary thing is, he said all those big John Deere harvesters and planters, he said they run off of GPS, and he said the GPSs are not made to last; they break. Parts come from China. Okay, can't get them right now. Okay, so it'll be back to men having to work, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. I can't remember. I heard this other day, but somebody has quoted like within the last couple of years that China had invested now this is not a direct quote, so let's just say this is for entertainment purposes. Allegedly had invested $53 billion in America, but last year they invested $1 billion. And since they're hoarding corn and wheat, you kind of have to think that they're turning the spigot off. And, you know, I mean, can you survive a $100 bale of hay? You're going to have to sell breeding stock, ain't you? Yeah, that's why last year I cut all my flock from 60 down to 12. So now I don't have to worry about it. I went through the whole year on 3 bales of hay. Yeah, I was lucky there. So I pray that God stocks your barns. Yes. Well, yes, blessed, not lucky. Fortunate. Okay, so bad times are kind of, you know, upon us, and it doesn't mean that it has to be scary. Once again, why did Agabus stand up and prophesy? God through Agabus prophesy that there was a great drought coming, so people could help them and they could prepare. Did God expect everybody, a drought's coming, everybody's just like, you know, terror? No terror. It's preparation. Okay. If you've not at least prepared something by now, and once again, your whole thing is, well, if God has to make manna fall from the sky, I'll be okay. I don't think that's, you know, I think the Bible actually says a wise man sees trouble coming and he prepares. Doesn't have to be a big thing. What's the voice? I mean, what's the voice of God sound like? I mean, there was one time in my life where I actually heard so much that I actually turned around to see who was behind me. But 9 times out of 10, it was like I humorously say, you know, the still small voice. My neighbor at the farm used to be the dental tech at the Winberries, and you know, she would every time I go in to get my teeth cleaned, she'd say, "Watch those back teeth." So weeks later, I'm in the bathroom and I'm brushing, and I hear, "Watch those back teeth." And next time I saw her, I said, "God told me, it sounds just like you." Well, okay, there's precedent for that. Eli and Samuel. When Samuel heard Samuel, did he say, "Man, I don't recognize that voice"? He thought it was Eli. Sounded like Eli. Sounded like Eli twice. And finally, Eli had to say, "Hey, just say your servant hears, speak to me." Okay. If you're hick from the country, God's probably not going to come up to you with a Boston accent and say, put on your khakis and get your khakis and get in your car and go. He could.
He might, if he wants to get your attention.
I got a friend in Boston. And, we love needling each other over our different language. Says the account of Jeremiah's call to a prophetic office is one of several prophetic call narratives of the Old Testament. Others include the call of Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Amos. A call to any ministry is not something people choose for themselves. It comes from God. The author of Hebrews wrote, "No one can become a high priest simply because he wants such an honor. He must be called by God for this work, such as Aaron was." This also applies to the prophetic calling today. God appoints whomever he wishes. We cannot call ourselves. Those who undertake such a risk without divine commission are like prophets that Jeremiah denounced later. "I have not sent these prophets, yet they ran. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied." I watched a show about Jeremiah one time, a movie about it, and literally everybody was prophesying peace, safety. "You're going to be okay, King." And Jeremiah was like, "You're going to go to prison, and Israel's going to captivity, and you're going to die." And they hated him for it. God has such a purpose for each of us, whether we are called to a public ministry or into business, education, medicine, parenthood. Knowing that God has a purpose for our lives gives us a sense of meaning and significance. How many knows or believes that you were born for this time right here?
Amen.
Don't lament that we're in this time in history, because God put us here for a reason. Okay, you want an encouraging thing? Let's take a model from the first miracle of Jesus. Okay, he saved the best wine for last. Okay, we were made for this time. This sitting in this chair right now was nothing I desired, coveted, nothing. In fact, I ran from this. I remember I told you all about it. God gave me a dream he gave me 5 little lambs to take care of. And I ran around trying to find anybody to take care of them, because in the dream I was like at the fair. In other words, I was out having fun. I was out having fun, doing my thing. And finally by the end of the dream, I only had 1 little lamb left, but I started taking care of that little lamb. Welcome, little lambs. And not long after that, it was just like, God ever bugged you? Has God ever just irritated you, just followed you like a 3-year-old after mama? What? Hi. But it's just like finally one day I said, "Okay, God, I don't know what it is, but I can't endure this anymore. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do." Next day, or it might have been like within hours. I just know it was eerily quick. Pastor said, "Hey, we need you to teach Sunday school." I was like, "God, you just trapped me by my mouth." And okay, so here I sit. But it wasn't, I didn't beg to say, "I want to teach, I want to teach, I want to teach." No, that didn't enter into the situation at all. Yeah. Did you rush to being a pastor?
No, can I tell you that story?
Uh-uh.
We went to a conference and I had sold out. "God, whatever you want, I'm gonna do. I don't care, whatever it is." And then here I started to list things, that I wasn't gonna do. The first thing out of my mouth was, "I know I won't be a pastor." Gotcha. That's what he did.
Yeah, never say never. Never say never. That's and there's always, seem to be new people rotating in and out. So, some things I'll say again. How many believe that if you lived in 1860 something that you would be part of the Underground Railroad? That you would do your absolute best to save people out of slavery? Okay, now, right now, there's more slaves on the earth than ever before. What are you doing? What are you doing? Are you giving anything to anybody? Are you even giving $10 to any ministry to rescuing people out of sex slavery? You can give a lot to missionaries. You can give a lot of stuff. You can give people drilling wells. You can give people, send tractors over there to grow, because they're trying to cultivate whole fields with hoes and stuff like that. And, but Troy Brewer Ministries, they last year they saved like almost 3,000 kids out of sex trafficking, and sometimes they got to go to court and they've got to listen to these grown men brag about what they did to a 4-year-old girl. And then once they're rescued, they have to be put into, they have to build homes, they have to be fed, they have to go to school. It ain't okay, we saved you, now get back on the street. So if you want an investment, quit looking at the stock market and start looking at people, because that is God's heart. He came to save people. He didn't, so, and listen, I appreciate the people who have a really soft heart and love animals. But when you love animals above people,
Yeah. Amen.
you're backwards.
Yeah.
You are backwards. Okay. And you can claim moral superiority by eating vegetables instead of killing an animal, but that piece of broccoli was just as alive. You just couldn't hear it scream.
Amen.
I remember that old Baxter Black thing he did on the Tonight Show. Y'all, that's humorous. Y'all should listen to that. Jeremiah's initial response to God's call was to raise an objection. Okay. How many here has gone through a truly horrible time in your life? You've lost somebody, or you've gone through to the point of almost a mental breakdown, or, and we really all think we're good people. But when you were squeezed, what came out of you? When my life fell apart, first off, if you've got a spouse going through cancer or some life-ending disease, the first thing you do is you feel like a dog for even feeling bad because it's them going through it. But you, as part of their life, have to treat yourself well too. That's one thing I've tried to tell people over 20 years is you have to. I know you feel like a dirty dog for feeling bad for yourself when it's your love that's suffering, but still you've got to treat yourself good too. But when my life fell apart and God squeezed me or broke me, the word test in Hebrew is to take a vessel and you pierce it to see what comes out. When God pierced me, a fornicator come out. I did. I didn't sleep with him. I played hands. I played a lot of hands with people. I looked out. Thank God that he don't just strike us dead when we mess up.
Amen.
28 or 19 years ago, I was sitting behind a drum set on that stage out there and looked at the auditorium of 3 women I was macking on. And no, they don't go anymore, so don't even try to figure out who they were. And I was thinking to God, back then I would actually ask for death. I said, I can't take this. I don't care. Maybe I'll act out bad enough that you just kill me, But we all really think we're good people until we get pierced and see what's in us. And then here comes the chance to take care of that business. That's the only reason. That's the reason you heat up gold or you heat up silver is all the impurities come to the top, and that's your chance to deal with it. If you just let it settle back down, trust me, you're going to go through another fire and it's going to come back up again, because God wants that dross out of you. Okay. He's a refiner. God is a refiner. Silver is redemption, but silver is not silver unless it's pure. Okay. All right.
Thank you, sir.
One last question, and then we'll get out of here. It says, how do you think 21st century would respond to a contemporary prophet foretelling disaster to a nation of the world? First off, they don't want to hear it. They who was it? Ahab said, prophesy smooth things to us, or they will grab people around there and they will prophesy and tell them what their itching ears want to hear, that you're okay, you're this, you're that, this ain't nothing bad is going to happen. And when something bad happens, who do they blame? One last thing. I've been listening to people for 2 decades now say that God said, and had dreams and visions. God said, if you divide my land, I will divide your land. And if what that gentleman last week we listened to said that Israel comes and Palestine come up with a two-state solution and they divide Jerusalem, there's been many people who have seen the New Madrid open up into an inland sea. Okay. So I've been telling people, it's like, if you feel the earth shaking and you're in that area, get in your car and drive west. Don't even look back. Just like people that God said, get off the roof and go. So pray that doesn't happen. You know, you read digital version of Perry Stone's Visions book?
Yeah.
Okay. What did he say about St. Louis?
Big earthquakes, St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Big earthquakes in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Which would affect the Mississippi, which would affect the waterway, which would mean bridges would disappear, which would mean that you talk about supply shortage now. All right, Nick, bless the people.
All right, you bet. Okay. Just extend your hands and receive blessing from the Lord. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you, be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his shalom. Amen. God bless you.
Amen.
And don't give up.
Excuse me, Tom.
Keep going.
It was a whole cup of coffee. Don't know what to do with it now.
Right.